Hi, welcome. This is a quick overview of what was our first training of the mandated trainings, 3 or 4 at the beginning of the year for all of our wonderful charter partners, Gifted Points of Contact. So again, this will be a brief overview if you are wanting to refresh or recap and listen to it, or if you missed this first training and need to do some follow-up with me in order to receive credit. If you are viewing this for the first time, I would like you to look at a couple things. Please take note of this, and you can take note of it even if you're not required to, because it can certainly be helpful. And these are the things and the questions I'd like you to be able to answer by the end of this training. Number one, what exactly is gifted and talented? Hopefully we're all gaining a strong understanding of this at this point, and if you already had that understanding as well, hopefully we can add new information to what you already know. What's expected of me in my role? So we'll talk about, again, what you will expect as the Gifted and Talented point of contact this year, or I like to refer to you as our partners, so grateful to have you with us. And then what are the required steps, procedures, and trainings that you should be going through this year? At this point, all of you are partway through those, so thank you again for everything you've done thus far. And then what types of supports can you expect? Hopefully a lot. I want you to remember, on top of everything else, a main one is whenever you're confused, concerned, have a problem or a question, please email or call me. And when Christy returns as well, either of us, as well as the entire department, housed on that 8th floor of the Emily Griffith Center building, we're here to help. So let's begin. So here's the first one. First was just welcome, and hopefully you're getting a chance to get to know other charter partners. If not, I would love to help introduce you as well. So if you're looking for other schools that maybe do more athletics or expeditionary learning, or work with at-risk students, or work with middle school kids, let me know if you'd like to partner more specifically with each other. Otherwise, hopefully you'll keep getting to collaborate and work with one another at our trainings on and off each year. It's a great way to problem solve and to not reinvent the wheel. The important thing that I shared at the beginning here is that the what's referred to, we call it the big, hairy, audacious goal. It's a big goal, but it's such an important goal. Our goal is to lead the nation, and this is really important, in providing equitable, high-impact gifted programming. Forget about that mandates word there, but I just want to make sure that you saw it. Equitable, high-impact gifted programming. So we know that there are still lots of students, for one reason or another, that are getting under-identified. Students in poverty, students that are English language learners, students of color, students with disabilities. So a big part of our goal, and my goal with you as well, is how can we make sure that we're identifying and programming for these kids that are often not found, even though they're there with us every day. One of the ways we do that is through identification procedures. So Denver has made some real headway by doing 3 different series of assessments, or sweeps, where we test everyone, and also using the NNAT, which is known for being better for capturing some kiddos that more traditional cognitive assessments sometimes miss. You already know the mandates for compliance, that you're the designated point of contact, that you identify students and do that universal sweep in kindergarten, 2nd, and 6th, and that students that are identified, as well as those that are magnet qualified, so highly gifted, will have an advanced learning plan. Some of you are at the middle school, high school level, and you say, well, so there's no universal sweep. There isn't a universal sweep at that point. However, we are still expecting around, give or take a few, around 5% of students. Sometimes we try to capture more by looking even at 10% of your students, but that would be gifted and talented. So one way that you know that you may be out of compliance is if you have 400 students and no one is identified. It's pretty darn near impossible that there's no gifted children in your school. So your task is to really find them, right? Do what you can to identify through reports. You can pull back up to 3 years of identification reports to count in your data. You can work with me and you can brainstorm other ways to identify these children through the different pathways through your work with me as well. And so always be thinking of that. A little bit of an overview. What are we talking about? I'll try to get this on the screen well. Says what it means and does not mean to be gifted. And I love this cartoon. I believe it's Gary Larson. But you can see there's a young boy with his books trying to push open the door when it says pull very clearly. So sometimes there's these misconceptions. Oh, they're gifted. They don't need school. Or, oh, they're gifted. They'll figure it out on their own. Or, just because they're gifted does not mean that some of the common sense things they may not be paying attention to. They're human like everybody else, and they have their weaknesses just like everybody else. So I always think that's a cute cartoon. This is part of a presentation that I do sometimes just to let students, parents, teachers know what we're talking about when we're talking about gifted. Some of the characteristics, if you haven't worked with gifted a lot, if you're thinking about traits of gifted children, even if they've never thought of themselves as gifted or their grades aren't high, because remember, a student can do very poorly in school and still be gifted. We're talking about how their mind works, things like memory, vocabulary, making connections to diverse things, learning quickly, all of those things. So some of the cognitive characteristics might be extra alert, so kind of high energy. Related to that, they might seem a little hyper at times. They might be faster than normal at learning to read and quickly picking that up. Often advanced vocabulary, certainly sustained attention. That is not in things that they're not interested in, but if they're interested, they're really passionate oftentimes, and they can be hyper-focused. Excellent memory, very creative, which may not be fun when we're trying to get them just one right answer, but thinking outside the box, and then they may also be an early reader. Some of the social emotional characteristics that we often see are a strong sense of justice, an early development at caring for others, or a strong sense of empathy, emotional intensity, so very happy or very sad or very angry, just feeling it intensely and passionately. They might be very sensitive. They can become very frustrated with their limitations, and that ties to perfectionistic tendencies for some. And if those don't work, sometimes they move into being an underachiever. They're often considered a leader during play, and sometimes they might then be viewed as bossy or pushy. And then overexcitable in general. So if you look up Dabrowski's work, it's called Dabrowski Overexcitabilities. Things like intensity in general, cognitive interests, intense fantasy, intense intensity to sensitivities like lights, sounds. This might be the gifted child that doesn't like certain materials, or the tags on their clothes bother them. It's a sensory issue, or not an issue, but sensory sensitivity there. Anyways, any number of things where you just think of they're wired a bit differently, and they can be viewed oftentimes and view themselves as kind of overly excitable. Let's move back to our training for a moment here. Oh, one last slide here. I love this. It says why gifted children need us. Remember the normal bell curve, we'd have average in the middle, and out here for cognitive scores might be on the low end, a couple standard deviations out at the 70, an IQ of 70, 68 and lower often is looked at for intellectual disability, or what we used to call mental retardation. On the other end, an IQ, a couple standard deviations out, is often referred to at a 130 or higher, is often what's looked at as a gifted IQ. And this is what happens though, right? We've got kids totally disengaged. On the other end would be students that maybe the schools are not differentiating for either, and they are terrified and they look like they're about to have a panic attack or a heart attack. And these kids are just totally bored, disengaged, right? Because if we're not working with them to meet their needs, they're not learning in school, they're not engaging in school. The main thing I want to focus on from this first training are your expectations for the year. So certainly attending the required trainings. If you didn't, this is where you are watching these follow-ups, and then I'm touching base with you. You're working with building personnel and your administration to make sure that that GT work is done and that there is true programming for your students. Also that your testing is complete. So some of you are your SALs, or your site assessment leaders. Some of you are not, but making sure that those universal sweeps in kindergarten, second, and sixth have occurred or are occurring. And then complete your building plan. That was due today. It's the end of September. If you have not yet done that, let's make sure that you get that ASAP. And that also connects to your kind of elevator speech of what you're doing for the year. What are you doing for the students? What are your goals and things that I can help you with? You're going to collaborate. So you're not necessarily writing these plans. Remember, it's something that's done in collaboration with teachers, certainly with parents and students. Try your best with parents, students as well. Younger might still be excited about it. Older, they might have started disengaging. Maybe no one's ever asked them before, or maybe they've associated it with more work. We're not looking for more work. We're looking for something that they're passionate about and that ties to their unique strengths. You're going to work with your coordinator to schedule site visits. You're all also scheduled on site visits now based on your tier level. So it's a little bit opposite the way we call it from MTSS, where anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks everyone is being met with. And most are somewhere in the middle, around that 6-week mark. More time or less time based on your needs. The individuals we want to check in more with is if you have big goals that you need help with, if you've been out of compliance in the past, maybe where you weren't identifying students or you didn't do your ALPs, or there were areas of difficulty that you had in the past. That's not reported to anyone else. That is purely based on us supporting you. And we can change those tiers over time. Right now, with just me here and wanting to get to know you all better, I am scheduling you as a check-in on a minimum of once per month. Again, once Christy returns, we'll spread that out. I can spend more or less time with you also as needed. Make sure that you're keeping your access private, so please don't share your login codes with anyone, no matter what. And make sure that you have now, at this point, hopefully practiced it some and used it some. Use that GT Teacher Handbook online when you have questions first, but please also reach out to us. Make sure that information and announcements that we create for your families, for your students, for you, that you get that right away. And if it's something for parents or students to sign up, we're going to have Super Saturdays. We have some family fun nights. I'm going to get that to you, and please make sure that gets to your children. That's yet another level of programming that all you have to do is be the conduit to get that information home. And it's yet another thing that's connected to something unique to supporting them as students on advanced learning plans. Schedule whole staff trainings when it's needed. And so again, you are welcome. I would be more than happy to come in and do teacher in service trainings or trainings with children, workshops with children, workshops with your staff or with your parents. That's also something where I could give you materials if you want to do that yourself. Be able to answer basic questions about gifted and talented and DPS and answer questions related to programming. So when you submitted your building plan, that's kind of your elevator speech. And hopefully you're not only thinking about what are the basic ways that you differentiate and so on already, but also what are some things special for gifted? And if there's anything in particular that you want to do more of this year, if it's more programming or if it's more teacher trainings, whatever that is, to know that well so that I can support you and so you can articulate that to parents and students. You're going to make sure that progress monitoring is taking place, so the goals that you write are across the year, ending sometime in May. How are you going to keep track? Different schools do different things. They might use notebooks. They might use online. They might do quick pull-out check-in. Some older students do something online, or they might check in on Naviance just as a quick, where are you at with your ALP? Any number of ways you can do that, and we can brainstorm on different ways as well if you feel stuck there. And then you're going to want to make sure that the programming that's done, it's appropriate. So it's not more work, but it's deep, it's complex, it's at their level, it's research-based, it's rigorous, it's differentiated. Audit directives are really once you submit your ALPs, if there are problem areas still that you would follow up with us. You can save yourself some time by just doing that ahead of time. You can check in with me on a few of your ALPs as you're writing them to make sure that you don't have to change them later. Keep families aware, work with the administration for compliance, of course. Coordinate the paperwork, so it's a lot of coordination, and we are very appreciative for that. And then keeping open communication with me, which I look forward to. A lot of this identification information was followed up with in our second training, so please watch that as well if you're trying to remember the different pathways, and also send me individual questions. So I'm skipping past some of these. We know that ALPs are a collaborative process. Next steps, put those important dates in your calendar. and make sure you've done all of the things that are now due. The biggest upcoming date is October 27th for your ALPs being due. And then we have some upcoming